Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is Vince Herman. He's going to tell a great story about when Leftover Salmon got to record with Waylon Jennings.
I saw Waylon Jennings sitting in with the old 97s, and I was like, kidding, Waylon Jennings sitting in with these guys. We should figure that out, man. I want to see that. We got on Hollywood Records, and they gave us a budget to make a fantasy island kind of record here in Nashville with Randy Scruggs producing, and Randy was able to kind of go after our wish list of folks to be on the record, and Waylon consented. He had just driven back from Arizona, and arrives in this car, and has the Waylon kind of wings on the front plate, his beautiful black Cadillac, and we had an amazing time in the session, and on the way out, we're hanging out, by his car, and the last thing he says as he gets there and drives away in his Cadillac was, "I never did like country music." But yeah, to record with him at Randy's was just an epic experience, to be sitting across the mic, from him improvising, and it was just unbelievable. And the stories he told, and everything was just pure gold that day.
Do you remember any of the stories?
Well, there's one, of course, he said, "I'd have to kill you if you." I guess I'm safe now, but they'd played a festival with David Allan Coe, Waylon, and God, I forget who the third guy was on the bus, but the festival wasn't going to pay him, and so they decide, all right, well, we're just going to go to the front gate and block the front gate with the bus until they come up with the money, So they're out there, right next to the ticket booth and all that. Just they're not. It's going on. It's like half an hour, 45 minutes or so. They ain't coming up with the money, and it's getting pretty frustrated, David Allan Coe gets off the bus, opens up one of the bays, and gets back on the bus and said, "Let's go." I said, "No, no, we should go. We want that. Don't worry, just go." And as they're pulling away, the ticket booth blew up. He had a quarter stick of dynamite underneath the bay. I don't think anyone was injured in the event, but
It's the wrong group of people.
Yeah, it's the wrong group of people not to pay at a festival, God, I would have hated to have been that promoter. Wow. Can you imagine telling those guys we're not going to get you paid? Things used to be different on settlement, man, It was pretty regular that, a road manager would carry a gun, and back in the day, I heard some stories. Yeah.
The first record, 1968. I'm listening to this because in Philadelphia, which had the radio, there was, and was it called Rock, Salt, and Nails? I think.
Utah Phillips wrote that.
Utah did?
Yeah.
I met him.
Really?
In 1969-70 in Philly. Yeah, at a concert. But it was something like that, and it was on A&M Records. I remember that. That's when I first heard him. And I was like, wow, this is like country rock, kind of, it was obvious. And then I bought the RCA records starting in 70. The ones Chet did, I still love them, And met him in 73 or 4. A concert with Willie, Waylon, Sammy Smith, us. I'm not sure, I remember going out to breakfast, and he was so nice, and he said, Bob Wills was revolutionary in his time. Oh, this guy knows. Yeah. So we played a lot of shows with the band, with Richie and the original band. The original band was Bobby Harold. He was, it was before the Outlaw thing, really. And Richie became a good friend. Richie Albright was half the reason Waylon, had that sound, like we used to call him Richie Allfoot. Doom, doom, doom. And I finally realized, a few years ago, because I knew he was good friends with Cash and they were roommates, etc. All of a sudden I realized he was trying to strip his sound down like Cash had done. It was him on that guitar with the phase shifter, bass drums, and Mooney. And whether or not it was, whether or not he thought it out or not, it doesn't matter. It was obvious. It was, strip it down to Waylon and a beat. And that's what Cash had done.
Is that the earliest that you could think of, that beat? Because it seems like there's the Waylon beat that we think of, but where does that come from?
That was Richie Albright. And definitely, period. That was it, because we would, and then Mooney, just brilliant. It was so cool. And he just would let him play, so we were huge. And again, back then, because Willie was our pal, and Waylon, we were all pals. But we went, oh, Waylon's going to be the hit. The chicks go crazy. And here's Willie. He's too weird, too cool, way too esoteric. And it was so amazing to watch the ascension of Willie Nelson to one-word superstar, one-name superstar. It was hippies and rednecks, combining. Everybody had long hair because it was fine for rednecks to have long hair by 72, 3, 4. And everybody's either drinking, getting high, or doing psychedelics, depending on their preferences. But getting along, a very short period of time. But it was that one time when I saw music absolutely conquer hate.
In this early, say, 72, 74 period or whatever, when you first met Waylon, what did he think of what y'all were doing?
He loved us because, and we were friends. And he understood that, the musicianship was A+. This was, the Sleep at the Wheel has always had the best musicianship there could be.
I may have met him at the Opry, tell you the truth. I mean, that's when I was playing with Skeeter Davis and doing the Opry with her, and I was getting ready to go overseas to Europe to do a European tour with her, and I wanted some extra money, and I had 3 of those Blackguard tellies. I had a 51 and 2 53s, and I'm thinking, well, I could sell one of those, and I ran into Hazel Smith, who was secretary for the Giesenslaw guys, and they had an office downtown, and she was a secretary there, and I told her about it, and she says, I had a guitar. She said, well, Waylon's looking for one of those. He's got his office there. Why don't you come by in the morning? Sure you like to see it. So I go by there and show it to him. I think I paid $350 for it. I think he paid me $450 for it, So I had some extra spending money to go to Europe in. And and the reason I know it was a guitar, because his main guitar, because it had a hole in the top of it, right where the control panels are on the telly. There was another hole that went all the way through the guitar. You could see, just like somebody was going to change the jack to the top, but they decided to put it back where it went. So I didn't know he still played it or what, but I knew I sold him a guitar, and it was a good guitar, And so I knew a lot of people that worked with Waylon and some of the guitar tech guys, and they said they took the leather case off of it. And I said, was there a hole on the top? And they go, yeah, we just didn't know why it was there. And I said, well, that's the guitar I sold him. And they go, well, that was his main guitar. Well, I've had some arguments with people online. Well, I've got his first guitar. I've got his guitar. And I went, well, take the cover off to see if there's a hole in it. Well, I know it is. Well, they won't do that. But I know there was a hole in the one I sold him. And my buddies said there was a hole in there when they took the leather cover off to clean it up or something. They just discovered this hole. So I know that was his main guitar. I think his son, that's the one he plays. I could be wrong. How those things go. But
where were you when you did the exchange, when he showed up to look at it? Do you remember if he played it to an amp?
No, I went to his office, to the Glazer Brothers office down on Music Row, where Hazel was there, and Waylon had an office there, and I went in there and just showed it to him. I don't think he plugged it in or anything. He just liked it, and it gave me $450 for it then, So that's kind of where it was.
That was a nice amount of money back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, he gave me some money to go buy my mom and dad some presents, going to Norway and wherever we went. I mean, it was my first out of the country visit for a Texas boy, and I'm going, I got to bring back something.
Do you remember where you got that guitar from?
I think I found it in an ad in the paper is how I got it. I was always looking for guitars. Still am always looking for guitars, mandolins, basses, whatever. I was always into the vintage thing, even when it wasn't vintage, but I knew it was cool stuff. And Cale's the one that got me into that, thinking, well, I mean, I'd played with Cale then, but he didn't talk to me about that kind of stuff. But I was into stuff like that ever since, playing old mandolins and looking for great mandolins and that kind of stuff is just what I've always loved to do and appreciate a great instrument. And ones they make now are kind of, they're new, But it was just another old telly. That's the only reason I got it, and I knew those were valuable. And like I said, I had a 51 no-caster, which means it was, between broadcaster and Telecaster. And God, I wish I had never sold that guitar. It was just great. And I had these other two 53s. And I go, well, I got enough of these, and now I have none. But back then it was to have three, and I thought, well, I can get rid of one of these and it was just as good as the other 53. So, but the 51 was really great. And I got some great pictures of that and some other great guitars that are very rare and mandolin stuff, This is 75, because that's when I was going to Europe. It was in 75, and I'd been playing with Skeeter on the Opry that year. And then I played with her about 5 more years on the Opry. But I'd go out with different people on the road, and she let me do that when I'd go play, but that was in 75.
Did you ever cross paths with Waylon again after that?
Yeah, there's a picture somewhere of us playing with Waylon, but I mean, I never really got to be friends with Waylon. Seems like I did some around Willie or something. Well, I did 2 cross paths. I played a Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic in July, the second year he had it at the racetrack in Bryan, Texas. Oh, it was great. I mean, Waylon, I was around him some other times when he played and stuff. I mean, I just never was tight with the guy, and I knew a lot of his band members. I know B. Spears played with him before he played with Willie, because Waylon came down and heard our bluegrass band when I was playing at the Carousel Club when we first moved here, like in 74. Waylon came down there and heard us playing because it was just the Carousel Club, and I remember B. Spears was with him, who right after that went on to play with Willie. I think he played with Willie before Waylon, and then after Waylon, he went back to Willie. So B and I were friends till he died, but so I was around Waylon a little bit, but not, we didn't hang out or nothing together. But
did you know Richie Albright at all?
Oh yeah, I loved Richie. Richie was great. He was really went to Richie's 60th birthday party, surprise birthday party, I think it was. Richie was just the greatest guy. I mean, he was a great guy, and so down to earth, and he worked hard. I mean, when Waylon quit playing, he went to work for doing survey. He was doing land survey when he was, 65 years old out there cutting brush and stuff. He just didn't stop. He just was a real great guy. There wasn't anything better than Richie Albright, let me tell you. And a great drummer and a great producer. Yeah, well, he was Waylon's man till he died, and like I said, and then he had to. But he kept doing other stuff. I know what Richie did. He just couldn't sit still. As the kind of guy that's not going to go, okay, I did that, now I'm going to lay back. He kept on it going. What it was, I'd been playing with I started playing with a group called Barefoot Jerry, and they were in town, Wayne Moss and those guys, and I was playing bass. So we rehearsed for 2 weeks to go down to the Willie Nelson picnic. 2 days before we're getting ready to go, they come to me and said, look, our bass player decided he wants to do this be his last show, so we want you to stay home. And I went, well, man, my mom and dad think I'm coming to Houston to see him and all this stuff. I mean, I've already, that really made me kind of mad. So So I flew down there the night before the concert, went to Houston to see my mom and dad, and got my dad's truck and drove up there and took my mandolin case with me. And I'd already been recording with Willie and Leon about 3 months before. So, you know, they really liked me and they welcomed me with, you know. So I go to the back gate where you're supposed to get in. I didn't have a pass, but I had my mandolin, but I knew the guy's name who was going to take my place playing bass. And I gave the guy at the back gate that guy's name. He said, "Oh, yeah, you're in here. Come on in." So I go in with my mandolin case. As soon as I walk in the door, there's Leon's manager, Lenny Cardell, standing right inside the gate. He goes, "Oh, Kenner, man, I can't believe you're here. Leon's going to love knowing you're here. So come on over here." He's with Willie. So I go there to Winnebago, you know, and they're in a Winnebago. So we sit there all day long. And they kept telling me, we're going to get you in. And we're going to get you on stage sometime. We don't know when. Well, here the day goes on. It's so hot and brine this day. You know, it's a racetrack. I mean, it's smoldering. And I'm seeing all these people come along and play. Barefoot Jerry gets up there and plays 4 in the afternoon when it's the hottest. And I'm sitting in a Winnebago having fun with Willie and Leon, you know, just having a ball. And then I run into the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band there. And they're going to play. Well, they think I'm something because I knew John McEwen. I knew most of the Dirt Band. And so they said, "Do you want to go to New York next week and play with us, be our special guest?" I went, "Well, yeah, great." You know, so that's another whole great story. But that's how I got introduced to those guys to go play on the road with them, was they think I'm somebody here. I just slipped through the back gate and I'm doing all this stuff. And if you listen to that concert, that Willie Nelson 4th of July, I didn't know this till I ran into Mickey Raphael one day at a supermarket here, and he goes, "Kenner," he said, "Man, have you heard the video or seen the video of the 4th of July?" I said, "No, I hadn't seen it." He said, "Man, your mandolin's all over the last song, Good Night Irene, and that's the only song I played, but it was Waylon and Willie and the boys, you know, with Leon Drunker and Cooter Brown." My gosh, if you watch that, you can watch that video, and you can hear me playing mandolin, Good Night Irene, at the 4th of July picnic in '74, and it just sounds really good. My mandolin does, but I got, you know, but it was so cool. That's the way it all worked out. I couldn't have mapped this thing out, you know.
What do you remember about the audience that day? What was the audience in 1974 like for the picnic?
They were drunk. They were high. They were drunk. Girl sitting on top of a guy's shoulder with no tops on, you know, and I'll never forget when, you know, so backstage, and I'm waiting to go play. I don't know when this is going to be because Leon's kind of so drunk. He's just, you know, but this girl comes up on stage and just has nothing on. And she gets up there and she walked by me going to the stage. I just let her go where she wanted to go, and gets up there and starts hugging on Waylon, hugging on Willie, hugging on Leon, and kind of like you looking around like, "Yeah, this is great," you know. And I'm going, "Oh, wow, I can't believe it." But it was packed as far as you can see. One of those concerts where you can't see the horizon for the people. You know what I mean? It was really cool. But there was a lot of hot, sweaty hippies and redneck cowboys there. They were all in there together, and they were just having a ball. And that's where you know, Willie's ball started rolling. So, oh yeah, no, they had shows like that since. I mean, I played some other Willie shows with Leon, 4th of July things, you know, and it was the same thing, just to see people, see rednecks, hippies, and cowboys all together having a ball, you know.
So I'm playing the Continental Club in Austin, Texas, and it's a big night for me because competition is fierce. As far as I was concerned, all the great guitar players were playing there, and I was just lucky to be on the team coach kind of thing. And we're playing, and this woman comes in to the Continental Club, and she was from Nashville, had a very kind of somewhat heavy New York accent. And she was an executive in Nashville, worked at these big labels, and she was now a publicist. And she said, "Look, I can't get you on country radio ever. You're too Texas and too raw, and they're just not going to go for it, but I can get you on television." I was like, "Great." She goes, "Well, I want to get you on this show called Crook and Chase, which is about, 5 inches below the Christian Broadcasting Network." I mean, for me, for a free thinker from Austin like me, you know. So she calls me the next day, you know. I go up to Nashville, very cliched, stereotypical trip to, you know, it's my first time in Nashville ever. I'm thinking, well, I'll get on this show. It's pretty square. My friends won't get it, but my parents will see it and they won't worry about me. You know, everybody at the family reunion is probably going to watch it. And they were worried about me because I'm playing like cool gigs in Austin and then going outside of Austin and playing like biker parties and redneck joints and pretty rough joints, and just trying to make that money and make that rent and, you know, hamster in the wheel. And so I get there and we go to the Opry Plaza and all that stuff where they shoot it. And of course I can't afford to stay where all the country stars are staying. So I'm staying, you know, at like a Motel 5 or whatever. And there's lot lizards out in the parking lot and people doing drugs and it's sketchy. And I'm keeping my guitars with me inside. And they wouldn't let you bring your band. So they had the band on the show, which were, you know, a bunch of great players, but they weren't Texas type players. And they had those like real neon two-tone Garth Brooks looking outfits on, you know, that they had, where a part of it's blue and part of it's yellow and just pretty hideous looking back on it. And all of them had the sweet mullets and they looked like Kenny from that Eastbound and Down show, you know. And so they learned my song, and I went up and did the sound check, and Evelyn Shriver is her name. She comes backstage and says, "Hey, Chris Christopherson's going to be on the show tonight." And I was like, wow, this just got a whole lot cooler. My mom's crush is going to be on the show tonight. And so I get to meet Chris, and Chris sees me play, and it was really weird that night because Chris put his capo on the wrong fret on national TV and started the band over on TV. If you want to see people freak out in Nashville, and he thought it was no big deal. It was like, take the ribbon. Hold on, guys, hold on. Take the ribbon from your hair, you know. And I mean, you just don't do that on TV. And Chris just could not have cared less, right? He thought it was funny, and of course he went up there and killed it, and he sounded amazing. He looks probably the most beautiful human being you'll ever be in the presence of. You know, it's the reason he's a movie star. And he comes backstage after it, and he's like, "Hey man, do you want to come to the Gibson Guitar Factory and hang out?" And I was like, absolutely. So we went and jumped in this town car and burned one on the way over, and we immediately just got on like a house on fire and started talking about Bukowski and James Joyce and writers and all these subversive writers. You know, I told him I was a big Hunter fan. Of course, he knew Hunter, which fascinated me, and it's very surreal, you know. So anyway, we hang out at the Gibson Guitar Factory. We play these guitars from the early 1800s that feel like they're breathing in your arms. They're so beautiful. And so I said, okay, that was a great night. Chris was great. We took him to the bus. He jumped on the bus. See you later, amigo. You know, just something out of a fairy tale. And I said, well, I'll just tell everybody back home and that'll be good. And the next morning I'm about to take off, and I get this phone call in my room. "Hey, Halls, I saw you on TV last night, and come down and pick some guitar for me." I said, "Who is this?" He said, "Waylon Jennings." I said, "How'd you know where I was staying?" He goes, "Again, I'm Waylon Jennings," which was hilarious. And, you know, and so I got in this car and I pulled the map out, because this is before cell phones and GPS, and tried to go find what was this, Woodland Studios. Yeah, beautiful studio, very legendary. A lot of great records done there.
Dust in the Wind, Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Yeah.
Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
Yeah, a bunch of great stuff. They have one of those natural reverb rooms. I don't know if you know about that, but there's an actual reverb room in it where they just put a mic in there, and it's, you hit your hand, it goes pop, 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 And anyway, knocked on the door, and Johnny Cash opens the door. And he goes, I was just standing there with my mouth open, didn't say anything. He goes, "Well, you going to stand there with your mouth open or come in and play that thing?" And then there was a kind of a hallway walking down towards it. And he kind of puts his arm around me and he goes, "Jess, have you ever seen Aliens?" I go, "You mean like real aliens?" He goes, "No, the movie Aliens." I go, "Yeah, Ridley Scott, Sigourney Weaver, I love it." He goes, "We just watched it on the bus last night." He goes, "Check this out." And he walks in and he grabs the microphone. He goes, "Put some reverb on this mother." And he did, and he does this impression of Bill Paxton. He goes, "We're all fucked and doomed, man." And he sounded nothing like Bill Paxton and everything like Johnny Cash. And that was the first 5 minutes. Like, that was the first few minutes. And then Waylon called me back to play on his record, Right for the Time. That day we were covering a Willie song, and I got to play on his record, Right for the Time, and that was kind of the beginning of that. And well, there's footage, for the listeners or people who are reviewing this. You can put in my name with Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash on YouTube, and because there was a whole film crew following them around. At this point, they were being followed everywhere because they were older. This was in the 90s, and that was also the first day that I met Shooter, who just produced my new record. So I've come full circle. And Shooter was like 15 or 16. And I was actually closer to age with Shooter, who was sneaking cigarettes, and than I was to the guys in the band. And we worked on, I'll never forget it. We did I Never Cared for You by Willie. And Waylon's doing "The sun is full with ice and gives no warmth at all." You know what I mean? And it's just me and him doing the whole thing, I was just trying to be cool and just play simple and not get in the way. And there were some adjustments, He was like, "Don't play too hard or don't play too rhythmically," And Waylon had this weird deal where he could brush his thumb over the top of the strings, and he would do like 2 or 3 tracks of that, and he would create this beautiful rhythm bed that was going on underneath it, everything. And it's the first time I'd ever seen it. I learned a lot from him, watching him. And, he was a brilliant harmony singer. He was one of those guys where he could just stop the song, say, "Let me go in there," and not rehearse it, and sing the 3rd or the 5th off the top of his head and nail it. So a natural harmony singer, a lot of great musicians, but not many of them can do that. But it was a dream come true, and it's something I always, hold near and dear. And
when it's over, like when you walk out of the door, what was on your mind then, that first day?
Well, I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe I was just trying to take it all in. But I wouldn't even say I was trying to take it all in because I was just so green. I was 23. But I'd grown up listening to that music. And the great thing about playing 10,000 hours of bar gigs before anybody knows who you are is you can instinctually hear the changes that are coming in songs that other musicians can't hear. So you can feel, if you know how songs are arranged, then you can feel the chorus. I'm not going to do this chorus the second time. It's got to be a bridge coming. Boom, I was right. It was the bridge. You know, a lot of times it's 1-4-5 with the 2 and the 6 thrown in, and it's, you know, it ain't rocket science. And but there was some weird stuff, you know. Like I would go in really prepared. I would hound, like when I played on the Ray Price record, you know, they were telling me I was going to have to read charts. So I spent like 3 weeks just brushing up. And then, of course, I got there and no one was reading anything. But it was in Los Angeles and there was a big orchestra.
So these weren't national number charts.
No, it was the Texas root Texas band, you know, but we had Beck, the guy Beck, his father, David, arranging an orchestra there. And that was amazing too. The next encounter was recording Right for the Time. And I came back to Nashville like a month later and played lead guitar on that record. I was the lead guitar player on that record. And that record really holds up. And producer Randall did a really good job of not doing any timely things that would date it. Pretty cool. And we got to hang out and, you know, I got to know Jesse. I just kind of grouped with Jesse recently, not that long ago, in Nashville. And we went down to Robert's Western Wear and, you know, but she's a great artist of her own right. That people don't realize that because she's married to like the coolest guy in the history of cool, you know. But you know, she had all kinds of cool stuff that she did, and she had her own way of playing piano, this kind of gospel, country, hillbilly gospel kind of thing. And you know, it's a weird place to live these days. It's always been a weird place. It's kind of a no man's land because you're too rock for country, too country for rock. But now those things don't really matter anymore because, you know, kids today, including my own son, I mean, they just cherry pick genres. Whereas we were brought up around scenes. But, you know, the thing that people don't understand about Waylon is they think that he was driving around in a pickup truck listening to Hank Sr. the whole time. But in reality, he was listening to these songwriters. He was listening to Jackson Browne, Mark Knopfler, Neil Young. I mean, he did Are You Ready for the Country by Neil Young. If those people that listened, that bought that record, half of them would have known that this free thinker from Kansas or from Canada wrote that. I mean, George Jones did one of the greatest, I think his greatest vocal performance of all time for me is Bartender's Blues, which was written by James Taylor. And James Taylor sings on the chorus and of the original cut. You know, David Allan Coe doing These Days by Jackson Browne. So these people who think that these are light rock bands because they didn't get turned on to them in a cool way and they heard some soft-ass single on FM radio, man, they're really missing the point. Because if you get a bunch of great players together and none of them have a good song between them, it's kind of a waste of time.
There's an episode of Crook and Chase, if I can bring it back to Crook and Chase, where Waylon and Neil Young are on there together.
Yeah.
And you could just see how much both of them just love being in each other's company.
Yeah.
It's got so much great energy, and I'm sure the people hosting the show had no feel for what was happening there. And they did Are You Ready for the Country?
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful clip.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen that clip too. And, you know, if those two guys can keep it together, I think the rest of the country could pull it together too. You know what I mean? Because they were on far different spectrums. Well, I went to the store with him one day, and he was playing the first, he had a Jaguar. He was driving a brand new Jag, and went to the store with him one day, and he was playing the first Dire Straits record. And it's amazing because this is a long time before Knopfler would have this huge effect on Nashville. You know, I say there was two things that really happened. Steve Earle and Richard Bennett changed the sound in Nashville. You know, Guitar Town, I don't know if it went platinum, but it definitely went gold and was somewhat of a hit. And, you know, not to put words in Steve's mouth, I'm a huge Steve Earle fan, but, you know, you could tell immediately he wasn't going to be the trained monkey that kept spitting out the same record. You know, he was probably young and growing as a writer, but that record had a profound effect on the sound of all that 6-string tenor bass and just the way they did that record. And then the next thing that would happen would be Knopfler. And so you started hearing like Mary Chapin Carpenter and people like this that were coming up getting hits off of Dire Straits songs. But that's how cool Waylon was, is he saw it early. And if you listen to Southbound again, I mean, it's just funk. They could be a band, they could be a bunch of hippie rednecks from Georgia. Southbound again, with that Jerry Reed, you know, claw shit going on. And yeah, these guys were great songwriters, but they were also great at identifying other songs that they think a lot of people would connect with. And there's a whole separate talent for that. I call it Waylonizing. Like, he Waylonized a bunch of songs. He actually did Baker Street. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's super rare, and the listeners can look it up. But if you ever heard Baker Street, the sax, he does it on telly. He goes, here we are down on Baker Street. And it's awesome. Because you know why? Because he could do whatever he wanted. There's a reimagining, almost the way, you know, they did in Russia, where they just kind of reinvented their history. There's a way with that now with people who become super traditional, and they don't want to see these guys like outside of their, you know, I'm a country guy, I got a gun in my gun rack. I mean, they did have all that, but they were also guys that had been traveling the world, playing in New York, and when, you know, there was 200 people at the Lone Star. And this is before, you know, Honky Tonk Heroes. And people don't realize that they were being exposed to all these writers. I mean, Gordon Lightfoot was like high on their list. Like Cash and Waylon loved Gordon Lightfoot, you know. And I don't know if that was because Cash brought in Dylan, you know, because Cash kind of ushered that in. Cash was a pretty progressive guy. He's misunderstood too. You know, he was, you know, bringing in Bob Dylan to be on your first television show. I mean, he got like death threats, and, you know, it's very much like the forefathers of the Constitution are being reinterpreted. The Highwaymen are too. And that's not to say that Waylon wasn't a good old boy and leaned more to the right. He definitely did, you know what I mean? But he was also a guy who traveled and had seen a lot of stuff. And
This Johnny Cash just had some sort of a monument
yes,
at the Capitol. What do you think about that? What would Cash think about that?
I think Roseanne said it well. Like, I think he would have been proud of it. All that stuff about helping underprivileged people and poor people, that's how he really was. He didn't go and play in prisons so it could make him look like a badass. He went there to play for them because nobody else would. So he's another one that I think's been, you know, they do it to a lot of people. You know, this mainstream audience will come in and kind of reinterpret who these people are for their own, you know, beliefs. And I think Cash is the biggest one out of the Highwaymen. I mean, Cash was really, I mean, he was against war. He was marching in the streets. He was best friends with Bob Dylan, and he was also a country boy. Yeah, and the chances of Johnny Cash becoming who he became, you can say it's predestined or ordained or whatever, but the chances of him becoming who he came, considering what he came from, are like 1 billion to 1. And really all of them were like that. If you want to really know about Johnny Cash, man, listen to that song, "The Devil," on that Chris Christopherson record.
To Beat the Devil.
To Beat the Devil. And it's really explains a lot about like Cash kept having to overcome things. They accused him of having an African-American wife, when he got caught with all that speed, which is pretty hardcore, even by today's standards, going across the Mexican border. He was wild. The fact that he was so wild that Waylon Jennings had to do his intervention. That's just unbelievable. You got to be pretty messed up to have Waylon, who's, I love all those guys, and one thing I've learned is there'll never be anyone like them, and you can't mimic them. You've got to find your own path. You've got to do your own thing. You've got to bring in your own influences. And because I've heard 1,000 guys try to mimic them, and I've tried to do it. I used to play a gig at the Broken Spoke in Austin that was the biggest weekly residency gig in Austin. A place would just be packed out every Thursday night, and I'd get up there and do my best George Jones or my best Waylon. And eventually I had to leave the Velvet Coffin and go out into the mean, cold world and lose my shirt on the road and bomb in Des Moines about 6 times before people started showing up. You have to do that. And that's what I learned from those guys, was to follow your own path. Don't compare yourself to other people, and just do your own thing. And all of them were so strikingly original when you hear them individually. When I met them, it was before the Rick Rubin thing had taken off. It was just taking off. So you would hear Cash on the TV in the next room doing a Taco Bell commercial, "Run for the border." They were doing all kinds of stuff. And
He's playing in Branson.
Yeah, he's playing in Branson. And these careers have had peaks and valleys. Shooter told me later the real interesting thing about the day that I was with them was Waylon and John had gotten in a falling out because John had to go do this Rick Rubin thing, which was about to just blow up, and he couldn't do this Highwaymen thing. So they hadn't talked to each other in a few months. And so that was the first day back, and they were so happy to be back in each other's company that they were laughing at everything. And I didn't know that until probably 6 or 7 years ago. Shooter told me that.
We done our service right there. This was our washroom. This was my room.
We're in Littlefield, Texas, and I just met this amazing lady, and it's Miss Jennings. Is it Helen Jennings?
Helen.
Helen Jennings. How long ago was it that this place opened up?
We opened in 2005. Oh, I've got
Okay, do I have a customer?
I'm sorry. This was his first guitar. At his house, there was always a guitar. His daddy played the guitar and the harmonica, and that's how his mama met his daddy at a dance. And his harmonica piece is broken. She was holding the harmonica for him.
Oh.
But anyway, this had Waylon and it had Maxine, which was his first wife. He said, I totally rent that guitar. He said, I sanded it and varnished it and used it up. And he said, Ernest Tubbs had thank you on his, so he wanted to write on his. And if you look real close, that's why James would turn the light on. But anyway, it has Waylon and it has Maxine, which was his first wife. And then that was James, Tommy, and Waylon. Bo was, I guess he was, I don't know if he was born then or what. He wasn't outside with him, whatever we had to say. So I don't know if Bo was born then. But anyway, we had this here backstage pass. We had Grandma Shipley, and she looked at that thing. She said, "Why? I'm not aware of that thing." This is Denver Powell. He's been here.
Uncle Jesse.
Yeah, Uncle Jesse, and played on the Darlings on Andy Griffith, played on Cowboys and Indians, played on Perry Mason. He done it all. But if you're into football, this is Luke Pearson. This is Don Newcomb, which has nothing to do with Waylon, but there's a picture of him over there. But this is James Street, and this right here tells about Bob Lilly being a cousin.
Oh, wow.
He is a cousin.
Man, that is a picture. That's what football used to be right there.
And look, he signed his name where you could read it. Some people, I had some people in here, and they were entertainers anyway. That Jamie Johnson, this is his autograph. And I've got his autograph in here. Somebody keeps turning my page. I'll leave his signature there. But anyway, he looks like one of them guys on Old Brother Wore Art by. I was trying to get Jamie's autograph when I was there, and he was out on this balcony with his girl, and they were smoking their little wacky weed. You know, and I was just an old lady, you know. He didn't know me from nobody, you know. I wasn't his mother or his grandmother. You know, I was just an old lady standing out there. But anyway, the bus driver, he had my poster. He said he'll be through in a minute, so every time I take a step this way, you know, he would get back in front of me. Well, he'll be through in a minute. So about the third time, I said, you know what? I said, just give me my poster back. I said, I want to get everybody's autograph. I said, you tell Jamie Johnson, Helen Jennings from Waymore's Liquor Store was here. Because I knew he would remember Waymore's Liquor Store. Then I wasn't such an old lady then. So I stepped over and I talked to Shooter for a while, and Shooter's been here. But anyway, so when I went back out in the hall, here comes Jamie Johnson smiling from ear to ear, and he signed my poster. So I do know where he signed his. But there's a lot of them I probably couldn't tell you. And then this is Jesse's up here with the heart. That was Waylon's, but it belonged to Dina, and she had moved into a house with this lady. And anyway, they moved out of the house, and she left 2 suitcases, and they were full of pictures. And this lady called. She said, I've got these pictures, and she said, I have no use for them. But if you want them, I'll keep them for you. So she kept them for us for a year. And then anyway, Julie had come through here, which is Dina's, Tommy Lynn's, I don't know, one of them sisters. Well, I'll tell you where I got these pictures from. It was these pictures over here. And then some of them Elvis Presley pictures. And that Elvis Presley, he signed that napkin. And that was what Waylon was fighting about, to do it his way, to record where he wanted to, and to have his band. And so he, Tom Paul Glazner, they did it at Tom Paul Glazner's, and that is a gold album. It went platinum. That's the first one in country history that went platinum. And then we went to the auction and we bought this here whip. We went out to Jessie's house after she moved to Scottsdale, and James was looking at the whip, and she says, well, James, do you want that whip? And he said, well, I don't want to take it from you now because she just moved in the house. She said, well, I'm not going to make my house a shrine. So when they had an auction, she had that in auction, so we went and bought it at the auction.
So this was the auction he had about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Online? We just came from the Buddy Holly Center and saw the motorcycle. Yeah, do you have any memories of Waylon with the motorcycle?
No, you know, now James may, he remembers seeing it over there at his house and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when Buddy died, it sold twice. I don't know how I don't know who it come back to, but anyway, the third time the Crickets bought it for Waylon for his birthday. Oh. And they give it to him. And
that's great. What do you think of these backstage passes? These are pretty fun.
I wished I had all of them.
Yeah.
Those were just some that we had when he came to Lubbock. Like I say, we married work.
Did he come back to Littlefield much after he?
Well, he came back. He did some of these shows, and then that last time he got down there with his diverticulitis.
Yeah.
Something I might be saying it wrong, and he had brought Johnny Cash with him then, or Johnny Cash with him. And that was the last time he come down one of these shows. He was doing the show for free. Now he had to pay his band.
Right.
Now, and if Johnny Cash come, he had to pay Johnny Cash. Somebody had to pay them, but anyway. And most of the time, they would come do it for free for Waylon, you know. But the bands had to be paid.
Sure.
And that was in his mom's house when we got married. And anyway, she had it painted, and he was looking at it. He said, "Well, Mom," he said, "it's okay." He said, "But I never had a great guitar." And this was his mom, and this is his dad with the guitar. This is them later on. You know, back then they didn't take pictures like we do now. You got a cam. You got the telephones. This was Johnny Cash's code.
Yeah. Manuel.
Yeah, I think it was a bunch of
Manuel
them,
made that in Nashville.
them suits done by Manuel.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them suits that sold at that auction too. And Bo, we all went together. Bo and me and James went to that auction, and he said, "I can't even afford that damn little old keychain." But they were selling his credit cards, his old credit cards.
Wow.
You know, they had some contracts from different gigs, and there was one for a high school in Crawfordsville, Indiana, that I've been to that high school, and it didn't sell. And I was like, well, there's something I would have bought for about $50 or something. I would have been able to afford.
Well, you know, and the thing of it is, then you turn around and you almost paid what you paid for the deal to the auctioneer.
Yeah,
He had done a bunch of different famous people in their auction.
So this here's Waylon's dad, is that right?
Yes.
What a great picture.
And they used to have the service station across the street. This is the service station, but now it's built all the way to the end. It's not a service station, but that's him, James and his dad.
So that's across the street from where we are right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I say, they built onto it, so it's different from that picture.
And this is
Great grandpa.
great grandpa Jennings.
There was a guy from Tennessee. He called Rex Ball, and he had called him, and he came out here to visit with James, and he calls every now and then, trying to get us to come down there. He said, "Well, James," he said, "I think I'm kin to you." He said, "I started out," he said, "I was kin to George Washington, then I rode up on this Shipley," and he said, "We've got the same grandpa." And anyway, he brought pictures, and I said, "Oh my God, that looks like Kenny Shipley over there at Bell Mobile Home." I mean, it looked just like him. Of course, James, he likes that history, and him and anybody sat there and talked.
Yeah. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Man, thank you so much for being nice to us and letting us look around.
Well, why
That's
would
very-
I be ugly to you?
Oh,
All right, up here, Helen. Get up here. Okay. This is Struggle right down here. This is his mom, Jennifer. That's Shooter. And this is Way. Way and Struggle sing also.
Mm-hmm.
And Way sounds a lot like Waylon. But Jennifer, she was Dwayne Eddy's. When Waylon and Jesse got married, she was about 2 years old, so they changed everybody's name to Jennings just to keep, you know.
yeah. Was that
And then that asked Jesse, said, "Well, how many kids you got?" Well, and why didn't he went to go and take it? And she just spit it out how many kids they had. She didn't say, "Well, half of them's yours and half of them's mine," and blah blah blah.
is this the house in was it Hendersonville or Goodlettsville in Nashville?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They had a big old balcony up there, and that tree doesn't look so big, but in that room that they had it because there were windows over there. That was bigger than the balcony.
Yeah.
I mean, they spent more on that than we had cash.
So this was in his mom's house, is that what you said?
Yes,
This was hanging up there. Do you have any idea who the artist was that did this?
I have no idea.
It's a beautiful portrait. There's a house here, and it was up in her house in Littlefield?
Yeah, it was on 23rd Street.
Okay.
I can't tell you what, that's where James and I got married. I can't tell you what the address is now. James probably could.
It's,
Only 64.
it's Jim Rockford over here.
Yeah, I saw James.
Oh, man, I tell you what, this right here was our oil room back here. We had an old Dearborn heater, and I had them pictures up there, and I got it for my 40th birthday. Next thing I know, it was just crackling. That heat was just crackling. So I had a copy, and a copy of The Highwayman. Made me so mad that I put it there. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about it, because I love James Rockford. This is just the copy of it. Yeah, my
Okay.
trouble one. You couldn't.
Did he come by here?
James Garner? No.
Yeah.
If he had, I'd have hitched a ride with him.
Bingo.
My kid he looked at me like I was a crazy person.
That's funny.
We was at Jessie's house, and she said, well, we could call him. I said, no. I said, I wouldn't know what to say to that guy. I'd be, what? You know? Now, James has got the gift for gab. I need to get up here with a ladder and redo some of this. I had one of my albums fell down here, and I don't know where it is. It's probably stuck over there in the albums. And this was over his mama's piano.
Okay.
And, she tried to get all of them when they were 16. Look at that other deal that's falling out. Well, you know what? I hope God's got a different job for me besides cleaning up trash when I get to heaven. I said, yes, how we gonna pick up them feathers? But if you'll step back in here, I'll show you. That was her piano, and that was the
That
boy's picture over it.
That was his mom's piano?
Yeah. That was his dad. I'm surprised they hadn't fallen down when we shut this door at night. Oh, don't you like that? Don't you think this outlaw shit's done got out of hand? I had that made. Struggles. He had his caps that had outlaw shit on it. Mm-hmm. And so this guy come by and he was making T-shirts for the school or something. And I said, yeah. I said, make me an outlaw shit. So he put the guns on there. And this lady in here, she said, well, can I buy them? I said, well, she put her name up there. And she did a pretty good job, you know.
Is that Waylon's cowboy hat up there?
No, it's
No?
just a hat we had made.
Okay.
It had the Waylon Jennings Day when he was coming here. So
What was it like when Waylon would come to
they were
Littlefield?
parking down the street going to Lubbock and walking over here to this here thing. It was crowded. The first year it was crowded, and every year it would get more crowded because people lived here, and then their kinfolks would come visiting. They would be camping out in their kinfolks' backyard just to come see the show. It was very heavily congested. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's a good looking.
That Tommy Follinger, he's a big football fan. Of course, him and James have been going to football games forever. But anyway, so he went and had a whole bunch of these hats made. And David Trask, he told James, he said, watch this. He said, I want to go up there and spoof him about the picture because they have a, what do you call it? You help me out here. When they get their pictures on T-shirts and stuff, they have somebody that's got a
Printing press of some sort?
no, not a printing press, but they've got dibs on the picture.
I see.
So you're not supposed to use it again.
Okay.
Well, he took that off of a T-shirt and put it on there, and he said that guy's here looking for you. Boy, Tommy just nerded his son. Anyway, we do have pictures on these, but these were drawn. They were not anybody's picture that we took.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful of that. And then on the barbecue sauce, well, Wendell and them, they had to go to court over it. And it's the same picture that they got on that deal there. But I don't remember how much they ended up having to pay them for the picture on the barbecue sauce. They don't sell that anymore.
Wow.
but there's a word for it. I just don't know.
What's the Jennings produce in West Texas?
That was James's daddy had the produce. He said they took eggs and milk, so that trainers bring milk cans in, and people around would bring milk in, and they would check it for how fat the content is, and I don't know how they did it all, but we have a creamery can. There's a can. I don't think it comes from their creamery, but anyway.
Oh, it says Littlefield on it, doesn't it? That's good.
So that's what his mom and dad did for a long, long time, and they used to call James Baney because he was always chasing the chickens. And when they brought chickens in, said if one would get loose, that his daddy would say, "Go get that chicken." I wished I did have some magnets, and I wished I had some hat pins.
Oh,
Of course, I guess you can get them off of Waylon's website or whatever.
let me see what, I haven't looked at the liquor store part.
That was our oil room. That's where James changed the oil in cars. And then the one on my side, the drive-through side, is where I got the beer. I've got a car over there. Let me go ahead and do you up, and then I'll go get that car.
All right.
I'll go wait on that, and then I'll come back.
All right, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
In the late 70s, I was playing with Delbert, and we opened some Willie and Waylon shows. They were Willie shows, but it was kind of Waylon and Willie kind of period of time. And Waylon was there, but I was always too scared to even go and say hi to Waylon in those days because he'd have a couple of bikers as bodyguards, and I could hang with Willie and Delbert and stuff. But I never really got to know Waylon, and then he started recording some of my songs. I had a song that was kind of a mini hit, Working Without a Net, because I had 4 sons, and I knew that Waylon had Shooter by then, and so I wrote a song with my friend John Jarvis called Fathers and Sons, and Waylon recorded that. On the heels of him recording a few songs of mine, somebody gave him a record of mine that had the song Trouble with the Truth on it. Later on, Patty Loveless recorded that song. But anyway, he just called me. Says, "I like that Truth song of yours, and you want to try to come up with something?" And I went, "Well, yeah." And the first day I got together with him to write, I had an idea in my mind because I'd read Willie Nelson's biography, and he talked about how he looked in the mirror and said, "Who's that wrinkled up old dude? I'm 18 years old. What is that?" And so I had this concept of it ain't you, the reflection in the mirror, it ain't you kind of thing. And so I had it going, and I thought, well, this will be good to take to Waylon, So I had the song kind of started in my pocket, and I got there at 10:30 or so, and Waylon was so sweet and friendly and started telling stories, and just one thing after another. It got to be like 1 o'clock, and then we had lunch, and it had to be like a white bean soup and a real straight up salad because his diabetes, he had to have a certain kind of diet. So now it's like 2 in the afternoon. I still hadn't been able to pull out my song and start it with him. And anyway, we finally got rolling on it. He told me all the stories about getting busted. Those 2 buildings over there on Music Row that he had 2 buildings together. You probably heard the Hank Jr. and Waylon were recording Storms Never Last, the song of Jesse's. And Richie was engineering, Richie Albright. That was the drummer and producer for Waylon for all these years. And they came in to bust Waylon. They had proof that there was cocaine there, And you couldn't see out. They came in the control room. You couldn't see out where they were tracking. They had the lights turned off, and he and Hank Jr. were out there. And so Richie, smart as he was, just pushed down the talkback. And so everything that was said was being heard by the guys out in the room. And they're saying, we've got a warrant for this, that, and the other. Well, of course, they immediately got the blow and put it behind a baffle, and hid that so it couldn't, in a way that it could not be found, pulling up the baffle and sticking it up under there or whatever they did. And then they walked in the room and the guy said, we've got a warrant. And they hand Waylon the warrant. He looks at it and he says, Hoss, you got the wrong address. You got the wrong building. You're in the wrong place. And the guy looks at it and realizes, he says, no, this is 2017 and it's 2015 or whatever. Those are not the correct numbers, but the guy said, okay, we're going to go get another warrant, but we're going to leave a guy with you. And so by this point, Richie had figured out the diversion of turning the music up really ridiculously loud, and then I think Waylon's agent showed up, and there's a lot of confusion going on, and so Waylon walked into the bathroom, realized he had a pocket full of pills, and he thought, well, this guy's got his eyes on me. I gotta go dump these pills. And so he walked into the bathroom, and the guy started following him into the bathroom. Waylon turned around and said, I don't know who you think you are or what your job is, but ain't no man gonna watch me take a shit. And so Waylon goes in, dumps the pills, and immediately flushes. And the guys outside, and Richie told me the look on the guy's face, because he had time to do anything in the bathroom before the flush came. And they came back with the new warrant, and there were no drugs there. There's nothing there. Everything was gone, and they got completely out of that one. But yeah, he told me that great story. He told me the story of about the Buddy Holly thing, like not getting on the flight, and one time Waylon told the story about how they played the gig that night, the night that Buddy died. They played the gig, and Waylon had some kind of thing. He was talking to the students at Belmont, and they said, well, tell us something about the music business. And he said, well, the night Buddy Holly died in the plane wreck, we went ahead and played the gig because the club owner asked us to play the gig, go ahead and make some music, So we played the gig. At the end of the night, we went to get paid, and the guy said, says here on the contracts, Buddy Holly's supposed to be here. He didn't pay him. So, and he's talking to a bunch of Belmont students. Says, so that's what the music business is all about. There you go. There's my example for you. I got to spend a bunch of time with Waylon. We wrote that one song, and that day, there was that telly over there that was kind of peeking from behind a chair. Just the headstock was sticking up, and I'm walking around the room trying to think of the words, and, I keep seeing this thing, and finally I pick it up and plunk around on it a little bit, and said, oh, well, you got an old telly here. And he says, yeah. He says, I want you to have that. Take that with you. He says, Mark Knopfler's over here. He put a little cigarette burn up here, but something's wrong with electronics or something. And just take it with you. It's been behind that couch over there for 3 years. Nobody ever plays it. And just says, I need to get rid of it. And I'm saying, you're going to give me this guitar? And it's from 1956. And I said, the Japanese are buying these things up. This thing's worth $7,000. And this is 25 years ago. So now like $50,000 or whatever it'd be. And I said, you need to hang on to this. It's worth more than, a lot more than what you paid for it in 1956. Because he told me he had bought it new in 56 and he'd just been laying around. He played all those guitars with the leather on them by then. He said, well, you're not going to sell it, are you? And the rest of the day, we finished the song, and I would go to take a leak or something, and I'd look in the mirror, and I'm going, yes. You know, I mean, I couldn't believe that he'd give me the guitar. And then as I was leaving, I was like embarrassed to just say, okay, I'll take my guitar. And so I took my acoustic and my little shoebox tape recorder. Waylon sang the only recorded version of the song. That was the only demo we ever had. So I take all my stuff and putting it in the car, and he's standing there in the door and he says, you're not going to leave without your new old guitar, are you? I said, you're really going to give me that thing? He says, I'm not going to give it to you. I gave it to you in there. And he went and got it and brought it out and put it in the back seat of the car. He says, man, I'm so sorry. I don't know where a case is to this thing, you know. And I was just completely blown away. I came home and called James Pennebaker immediately, and James knows everything about Fender guitars in the world. He came over, popped the neck off, and it said Taddeo. So I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the guy that was putting Fender guitars together in 1956 in Fullerton, you know. And James said, "Oh yeah, this is the deal," you know. Yeah, it was unreal, and it's a treasure, a lifetime treasure. Funny thing is, I saw him a couple of years later because Donnie Fritz was in poor health, and Waylon had come down to play a benefit for Donnie, and Christofferson was there too and stuff. And I saw Waylon. By now he was in a wheelchair, and he says, everybody's been telling me about me giving you that telly. He said, I guess I was crazy to give you that thing. He says, where is it? I need that thing back. You know? Yeah. It was so sad to see him, you know, get worse and worse. And they had to amputate him, his foot and stuff. And he moved back to Phoenix and sold his place over where we wrote all our songs. When we first started writing, the shooter was a little kid upstairs banging on the drums, you know. It's like, he was so sweet and nice that I couldn't believe it. And at one point I told him, I said, man, we used to open some shows for you and Willie in the 70s, and I was scared to even come up and talk to you because he said, all Halls, I was just high and scared, you know. And yeah, he was a treasure of a guy. Yeah, we played a few gigs together. Me and Richie and B. Spears played at this place downtown called Puckett's. We played there a couple of times, and then I produced a record on Billy Joe Shaver called "Wacko from Waco." I got Richie and B to play on that record, you know, because I mean the whole Waylon thing is. It's just, you know, you've heard it before. It's Richie's foot, you know. It's like the key to the whole beat, everything about it. It's like every drummer just went straight to that. And there was something that Richie had that was like, you think, well, it's just four on the floor. I mean, what's the big deal? And then you realize, oh, it's the way he does it that, yeah, Richie was special. Yeah, first time I ever wrote a song with Waylon Jennings, this guitar was kind of, if you imagine it, you know, behind this chair, kind of peeking up like that. And I picked it up and bonked around on it a little bit. And he said, Halls, I want you to have that, take it with you. And he says, Mark Knopfler's over here. He put a little cigarette burn right there. And but he said, it's something's wrong with electronics. It doesn't work right. At the time, it had a tray that was on those brass trays and had all brass saddles here. Yeah. And he said he bought it new in '56. And I had a picture that Jesse gave me of him playing it at a bar in Phoenix, and it had one of those curly cords that went straight back to a super reverb that had one of those Lansings in it. It's like Yeah, loud. You know. So I brought it home. I realized I got to get him to sign it. And so I took it back the next day, and he wrote, Gary, enjoy it, Waylon. And
Is that Waylon's buckle rash on the back of that?
yeah, I guess so. It's not mine. He played it for a good while, and then he started playing those guitars with the leather on,
Yeah.
I remember walking into the Palomino and I was like, this is where Linda Ronstadt and Graham Parson played. And I was just so into them. I just looked around and I just thought it was such a warm looking club. It was lots of wooden tables and the lighting. And I would go there and see Emmylou Harris play and Gary Stewart, George Jones, Tammy Wynette. I met Waylon Jennings there. And he smelled like leather and cigarettes, At this point, when I met Waylon, I was one of the regulars by then, because I was always, signing up for the Palomino Talent Contest, and I ended up winning like about 7 times in a row, and then they put me in the big finale, and I won that, and then after that, I would start getting bookings. And on the weekends, and put a band together and stuff. So one of the managers said, would you like to meet Waylon Jennings? And I said, is he here? And because I was just such a big fan of Waylon and Willie. And I remember I really loved Gail Davies, too. She was kind of part of that outlaw scene. I hadn't met her yet. I didn't meet her till I was traveling in Europe, but he was really warm, and he gave me a hug, and that's how I got a whiff of the leather and the smoke, And he wasn't playing; he just got off the road to come see who was playing and hanging out, and he kind of had this long, greasy hair under his cowboy hat, and he was just so warm. And later on, I got to play with him. Him and Jesse were playing. And I believe we were in England, and I saw the poster from him and Jesse, and he remembered meeting me, and I got my picture taken with him. That would have been around in the 80s, early 80s.
You guys just happened to cross on the road in England?
We were on the same bill. Yeah, I think it was in Bournemouth, it was during, there's Mervyn Kahn. You know who he is?
Why don't you tell the people about
Okay, Mervyn Kahn was a promoter in England, and he would do these giant country music festivals. I can't remember the name of the festivals, but it would be at Wembley Stadium. And was that in London, I think? Wembley's where they do like sports and everything too, but they would do this, they bring everybody in. I remember Lori Morgan was there, Tammy Wynette was there. Lori Morgan's husband that passed away, Keith Whitley was there. I was there. And I think maybe K.T. Oslin. There was a lot of Nashville people that had been signed to country music back in those days. Country music was not as big as it is now, at all. But it was cool.
Hey friends, I hope you're doing well. I went down a Waylon Jennings rabbit hole last night. I went way down. I spent hours just looking up Waylon Jennings stuff. And somewhere in the bottom of that rabbit hole, I found an old auction site. There was an auction, an estate sale of Waylon Jennings stuff back in 2014. And the stuff's still up online. And I just started looking. There's over 2,000 things that they sold. And I just went through and looked at what all these things were, and it was pretty damn amazing. And I figured I'd show you guys the highlights of some of it. We'll start off with, I'm going to try to put the pictures up right here if I can figure out how to do that. But this is Willie Nelson's braids, Willie Nelson's hair. Waylon Jennings had it. This sold for $25,000. And the story was that in 1983, Waylon quit drugs and cocaine and, booze and all of that stuff. And Johnny Cash and June decided to have him a sobriety party to celebrate him going straight. And they got him presents. So Willie's present to Waylon to help cheer him on and to, help say, yeah, you can do this sobriety thing, was he cut his braids off and gave them to Waylon as a present. And this ended up being auctioned off in his estate. $25,000 for Willie Nelson's braids. So also in the estate sale was Hank Williams cowboy boots. Somehow Waylon ended up with Hank Williams cowboy boots that he would wear on stage. These sold for $8,000. And the story is Waylon supposedly wore those he got the boots and he wore them to a recording session in Nashville one night. All the power went out in the studio and the wind blew a tree down on top of somebody's car, and Waylon swore he's never going to wear those boots ever again. But they ended up in his estate sale, and it sold for $8,000. So this is a handwritten letter from John Lennon to Waylon Jennings. They had some chance meeting. I remember them talking about this in Waylon's book, his biography, where they had a chance meeting and they got along really well. And since John Lennon was a huge Buddy Holly fan, naturally he was going to dig Waylon. And Waylon said something to the effect of, I didn't expect you to be so funny. I didn't expect you to have such a good sense of humor, which is a weird thing to say, considering if the Beatles were anything, they were some of the funniest guys, very witty. And so you must not have seen any of the interviews or anything. And but I guess John wrote a letter pitching a song to Waylon, and this right here hung in Waylon's living room for the rest of his life, this picture. But this sold for $7,500. I'm going to see if I can blow this up and tell you what it says. It says, Dear Waylon, and he misspelled his name. This is typed out. He misspelled Waylon. It's W-A-Y-L-A-N-D, and then handwritten next to it, John wrote Waylon the right way. So sorry about that. 'Twas good to meet you. Try these on for size. It's a hit. I should have released it as a single myself, but I left it too late. But it ain't for someone else. All the best to you. Saw you on TV last week. Very good. Nice band. And then there's a little handwritten John smiley face and nice stuff. But it sold for $7,500. It's neat that Waylon dug that so much that he'd go ahead and hang that in his home. And there's all kinds of handwritten lyrics. Just so much, like spiral notebooks full of stuff, napkins with lyrics written on them. And the spiral notebooks, they would sell each one of these notebooks for different amounts of money. But when you go reading the description, you realize that this is how he wrote the book, his biography, or his autobiography. And he would sit there and write that by hand, which is neat to me because I would have thought that would have been a series of interviews where he would tell his stories. I believe Lenny Kaye was the person who helped him write that. I would have thought that it just would have been a series of interviews where he told stories and anecdotes, and then that would be turned into the book. That's usually how those things are done. But it's neat that he wrote his anecdotes and his stories and stuff out by hand, and that there's actual physical ways to commemorate that. I love this about that era. It's kind of gone and past us, but people wrote things down on pieces of paper. John Lennon sending a note to Waylon, or him writing lyrics or whatever. But all of that ended up being used in this book right here. I've done videos a couple years ago where I talked about this, and people seem to dig it. I think I sold a lot of these books for Waylon, but you ought to get it. It's really, really good. And the people who bought it all said that, got a lot of comments saying that they really enjoyed it. You might pick it up. I'll put a link down in the comments, and maybe I'll get a little bit of enough money to buy some cat food or something from those. I didn't do that before, so I'm not that bright, but the most expensive thing that went in this auction was Waylon's desk. It says it's a partner desk. I don't know a lot about desks, but it was given to Waylon by Johnny Cash in 1985 while recording The Highwayman. Waylon, in the drawers in the desk, Waylon used it as his black book. Just he would open the door, it'd be empty, and on the bottom of the drawers, he would write people's names and phone numbers. So whenever he needed a phone number, so you look in there and there's Willie, there's Johnny Cash, Hank Jr., all these phone numbers, and so that's kind of an interesting. I wouldn't have expected that to be the most expensive thing to go in this estate sale. But I can kind of see why. That's living history. That's that's his hand, and it's a nice piece that people could display easily. And I should say that sold for $70,000. It's a lot of money. That's the most expensive thing in the sale. There was a car. It was a 1978 Corvette that sold for $30,000. So $70,000 for a desk seems like a lot to me, but I can kind of understand it. Also, there were a lot of guitars for sale. When you think of that Telecaster, the Waylon Telecaster with, there were 5 or 7 of those that sold. There were Fender custom shops, and I think they all went for around $10,000 a piece. I don't know if there's one, maybe you guys know that. Is there one definitive Waylon Telecaster that he used for a long period of time, and then there were copies of it? Or, I don't know, is that one out there somewhere? I think you guys probably know the answer to that, and you can tell me down below. But there was also a lot of acoustic guitars, and the most interesting one is a 1946 Martin D28 herringbone, and it says that this is the one that he would leave around the house and he would write songs on. So he wrote a lot of songs on this guitar. It sold for $26,000. A beautiful D28 and a 1946. That's probably a cool guitar. There's the original contract that put the Highwayman together. You never think about that, but if you're gonna, there's contracts for everything, and he sold the contract, that the legally binding thing that put the Highwayman together, for $18,000. So this is a pocket watch, a really nice pocket watch. It's called a Howard 23 jewel pocket watch on chain. This sold for $10,000. It was a gift from George Jones to Waylon and Jesse when Shooter Jennings was born. Beautiful old pocket watch. That's a classy gift. This really caught my attention, and I really, really dig this. But it's Muhammad Ali's robe. This is a robe, and also sold his gloves from, I guess, when Ali, the rematch with Leon Spinks, when Ali won the championship back. I remember watching this as a kid, but Ali, the first match, Ali didn't take it seriously, and he didn't train very well, and Leon Spinks surprised him and upset him, and he lost the championship. So the rematch, when Ali became a champion for the 3rd time, which is the first time any heavyweight had done it, it was a big deal. I loved Ali when I was a kid. I still love Ali, but me and my dad would watch those fights together religiously. And I just remember sitting there watching this one. I remember the Foreman, Ali and Zaire, sitting there watching it with our neighbor. I wrote a song about it called Ghost of Our Fathers. Maybe you can find it on here. If not about that, I mentioned it in it. But so this is Ali's robe from that fight. It was his training robe. Sold for $5,000. And also, this is Ali's training gloves. These sold for $1,500, which, man, I'd like to have Ali's training gloves. I wouldn't be able to pay $1,500 for it, but this is Waylon here. Boxing is my favorite sport, and Ali is one of my heroes. I was in New Orleans on the night of September 15th, 1978 at the Ali versus Spinks fight, when Ali regained his championship title for the 3rd time. After the fight was over, I was invited to the champ's dressing room. It was a night I'll never forget. Here are the sparring gloves and robe from that fight, Waylon Jennings. And it says when Chris Christopherson introduced Ali and Waylon, and Chris said, I've never seen two people like each other instantly like those two did. Waylon was thrilled. They also sold Waylon's passport that he used during the Highwayman, and that sold for $3,750. You never think about things like passports one day being collectible, but I think I remember seeing Elvis's passport out there sold at auction at one time. And I want to say also, I just remembered from the Ali robe and the boxing gloves, Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, who has the great guitar collection, he owns a robe and some gloves from Muhammad Ali, and I remember seeing those when I was in his office. I got to see his stuff a few years ago at the Colts complex, and I remembered seeing Ali robe and gloves. I wonder if he bought those from the Waylon estate. I mean, there's probably a lot of Ali robes and gloves out there, so it seems like his might have been from Zaire, but I don't remember for sure. But I thought I'd throw that in there. Maybe somebody knows. They never really say who bought the stuff. That's probably to protect the buyers from weirdos like me wanting to look it up. This is really interesting to me that this did not sell, but he owned Buddy Holly's motorcycle, and the starting bid was $50,000, and nobody bid on it. And that's interesting to me, but there's a story behind it. I remember them telling the story in this book. I remember him telling that, but it says, I'll read a little bit of that for you here, but on May 13th, 1958, three young, very exhausted, and newly successful musicians found their way to Ray Miller's motorcycle shop in Dallas, Texas. They were at the forefront of creating a style of music that was rapidly redefining America's musical taste. Having just returned home to Texas from a world tour, the trio set out to buy new motorcycles as presents for themselves to celebrate their hard work and good fortune. Upon landing in Dallas, they made a spur-of-the-moment decision to skip their connecting flight home. They decided to each buy a motorcycle and drive back home on the motorcycles. Their love of Marlon Brando and the Wild Ones inspired their decision. Taking a cab from Love Field into the city, they walked into a Harley-Davidson dealership where they were shown the door by the proprietor, who failed to recognize the young celebrities, thinking instead that they were bums. Their next stop was at Ray Miller's Triumph and Ariel motorcycle shop. When they walked in, both the owner and his mechanic recognized them instantly, and they were given the royal treatment. Joe Maudlin, the Cricket's bass player, immediately fell in love with a Triumph Thunderbird motorcycle and bought it. Jerry Allison, their drummer, bought a Triumph Trophy. Buddy Holly was transfixed by a dark red Ariel Cyclone 650cc in the showroom and decided that it was the bike for him. That model, only built that 1 year, 1958, with only a production number of 200, impressed Buddy as something very unique and special, and he knew that he had to own that bike. Buddy picked out the Ariel, and they all paid in cash. Besides their new wheels, the trio purchased matching Levi jackets and peaked caps adorned with wings. Buddy, Joe, and Jerry rode the 350-mile trip home in a thunderstorm. That's freaking beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I hope for my motorcycle buddies, man, I don't know how to pronounce Ariel. It's a 1958 Ariel Cyclone motorcycle. It's an Ariel, but nobody bought that. I wonder where the bike is today. That's beautiful. It was later given to Waylon as a present. So Waylon ended up with Buddy Holly's bike all those years. And I think that's beautiful. Also, there's so many things that didn't sell. Like when I go to some kind of an estate sale, I usually am not looking to spend much money. I love auctions and estate sales and stuff like that. But I just want to find some little something, that I can afford, that I feel like I got a piece of something that I care about. And so I was looking through and trying to figure out what my versions of those would be, and there were all kinds of contracts. There were a lot of photos, a lot of things scribbled on napkins and stuff like that. Some of those didn't sell, but the contracts were very interesting to me, and I looked through all these different touring contracts, and I found one from Crawfordsville, Indiana, to play at a high school in Crawfordsville High School in 1969. It was a contract for Waylon to play there, and it didn't sell. I probably could have bought that for $100 at the time, and I think I would have, and probably would have framed it. But you guys remember the episode when I had just gotten back from England, and the Beatles' Get Back had just premiered, and I watched it, and I was standing outside kind of losing my mind at how great it was. I filmed that in Crawfordsville, and it was very close to the high school there where Waylon once played. I didn't know Waylon Jennings played in high school there. And so I looked that up, and it was a Wednesday night, and he appeared for $1,500. And he was in the contract. It's interesting to see what's not in the contract. All that's really in it is he needs to show up in a 5-piece band, and he'll make $1,500. It doesn't say you play this long. It doesn't say you get this hotel. You know, it is really bare bones, but it was a contract. So he played on that Wednesday night at Crawfordsville High School in Indiana, rural Indiana. I got to looking around. A month earlier, I believe it was a month earlier, he played at the Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum. This is a place where the Beatles played. It's kind of a famous deal where the Beatles showed up and played at State Fairgrounds Coliseum. This is where I saw Dick the Bruiser beat the hell out of the Valiants when I was a kid, feud with Ernie Ladd. You know, him and the Crusher would tag team against people like the Valiants or Ox Baker and whoever the hell. That used to happen. That's where I used to go see that stuff. That's where, when I was a kid, I saw Wayne Gretzky play hockey for Indianapolis Racers. He was in Indianapolis's minor league organization, and I went and saw that. So this is in that same place, and I've actually played at the Coliseum once, years ago. But that's where Waylon Jennings played on a package show for WIRE, which was our local AM country radio station. They would have an annual thing called the WIRE Picnic, which was an outdoor show, and I would go to that, you know, when I was a kid every time I could. This isn't that, but it was a package show at the Coliseum with Porter Wagner, Dolly Parton, and I forget who else was on it, but it was just a month earlier that he played the high school out there, and he played for the same amount of money, $1,500, in 1969. I looked up the inflation calculator. That's $12,900 and something now. But I thought it was interesting that in 1969, there was no concerns about blacking out dates. One, he went back to towards Texas and played in Houston and Dallas in between these two dates. So he went across the country, went out to Arizona, came all the way back to Indiana, and did those two dates 30 days apart. And now there's no way that would happen. There's no way that would happen. But I found it really interesting, and I would have absolutely bought. Actually, the contract for the Indiana State Fair did sell for $200. And I say the State Fair, it's the Indiana Coliseum is what they call it, but it's on the State Fairgrounds, you know what I'm saying. But I absolutely would have bought that. That would have been the thing that I would have tried to buy, and I would have framed it. If I didn't hang it in my own home, I would have taken it to a local venue like the Hi-Fi and had them hang it up there as a piece of history. And, but anyway, I figured I would show you guys that. There's a lot more, just so much stuff that I could go down the rabbit hole forever, but I thought you guys might appreciate that. And there's a lot more Waylon stories in this compilation I put together. If you haven't watched that right now. I think you'll dig it. And I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.